ACAB is a polarizing phrase associated with political opposition and violence. The phrase all cops are bastards and the associated movements like Black Lives Matter are built upon the fundamental principle that the police and systems associated use brutal and unjust force to oppress minorities and the general public. The movement seeks to get justice for the deaths we know of and for all of the cases that have been hidden from us. Yet, it isn't just for justice. It seeks to create a system where this kind of radical protest is never required and the stakes never become life and death. Those who support the police often talk about the police and their sacrifice, using the dangerous situation they put themselves in as a reason that they can use this unusual force that they tend to use. Police do have dangerous jobs, I won't deny it, but I am going to ask if they are making it as safe as possible, not only for themselves, but for others. For this, let's examine Tyree Nichols' case. For those who haven't seen the footage, the videos will be provided in a link in the description, but it is very brutal, so be warned, and for those who don't want to watch the videos, I will quickly explain what occurs. The first video shows Tyree Nichols in his car with 4 unmarked police vehicles surrounding him, with all 4 officers out of their cars with either tasers or guns pointed at him. He is then pulled out of his car with extreme force by one of the officers. Nichols can be heard saying, "I'm not doing anything," as he is on the ground. 3 officers are then on top of him, one with a taser to his thigh. After complying and on the ground, not struggling, he is then pepper sprayed in the face. Tyree then runs, fearing for his life. He makes it into a nearby neighborhood where the second set of videos occur. 5 officers, I repeat, 5 officers are on top of Nichols, punching, pepper spraying, and tasing him. In the videos, he can be heard crying out to his mom a total of 3 times. The cops continue beating him for about 2 to 3 minutes. After that, the cops then let up. Nichols can be seen lying on the ground, unable to control his body, rolling around. They then prop him up against one of their police cars as an EMT arrives, and then the EMT takes 16 minutes to begin treating him. And I do want to point out that Nichols is unresponsive or unable to move his body as he's propped up against this car, and the EMT is not treating him. This was not a dangerous situation. This was a routine traffic stop, and all of the cops involved escalated the situation by using violence. This isn't just a rare case either. This is the methods of most cops. We can look at Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. So while I do agree that policing is a dangerous job, I believe they make it a lot more dangerous for themselves and for others with their methods. Those who oppose the police will often talk about scary subjects like systemic racism. These are very stigmatized, so let's define them to make sure that everybody watching is on the same page. Systemic racism is the claim that not only the police, but the government, judicial system, and police, among many other systems, are just inherently racist in the way they function. For this, I will provide the following evidence. A black person is 3 times as likely to be killed by a police officer than a white person. A black person is 3 times as likely to be incarcerated than a white person. So I'm going to pause real quick to explain my math. First, we will look at the US population statistics sorted by race, but the website only gives us percentages, so you will then take the total population, which I believe is about like 33 million, and then divide that by the percentages. And the percentages we are given are white people make 75.8% of the population, and black or African American people make a 13.6. So if we then divide the total population, we get about 252 million white people and 45 million black people. We then take the race of inmates, or the total population of inmates sorted by race, and divide that by the total population. We then get how many inmates there are per million of a certain race. Looking at the results, we can see 362 white people per million, but black people make up a whopping 1,347 per million. So I was wrong, it is actually around 4 times, but the point still remains the same. A black person is 4 times as likely to be arrested for having weed than a white person when white and black people consume weed at essentially equal rates. Now, these statistics can point to 2 main things. There are either internal factors, meaning black people are just inherently prone to crime, which is just racist, or there are external factors, like how the system tends to deal with black people differently than white people. Now let's talk about police brutality. In 2022, 1,123 people were killed by police in the US. That is around 3 people per day on average. There was not a single officer who was punished for any of those deaths. The odds that every single death was unavoidable is very unlikely in my opinion. We can also examine how police are trained. For this, let's look at David Grossman. The company he runs was called Killology Research Group. I repeat, Killology. It was Killology up until 2022 when he changed it to Grossman on Truth. And if you have any questions about this, just go to killology.com and it will reroute you to his new website. Grossman was also recorded at one of his seminars saying that sex after fighting or killing a suspect is the best sex in your life. That is summarized, and this man gives police seminars across the US. You can even look at how they deal with people who don't agree with their methods from within. This NPR interview that I am referencing is where Michael Martin interviews a current police sergeant, Ike Lambert, and a former officer who was fired from a civilian review board, Lorenzo Davis. Lambert talks about his situation. He was not demoted, but treated way differently after he refused to sign off on a faulty report where it misreported an officer killing a teenager off duty. After this, and he refused to sign off, he was then removed from the detective department and put back on patrol. All because he wouldn't misconstrue the facts of the situation to favor the officer, making it look like the officer was the victim, when he was not. Lorenzo Davis was also in a relatively similar situation. He was doing a report on the massive amounts of police misconduct being committed in Chicago and was then removed from the board because he wouldn't misconstrue the reports and evidence he found to favor the police officers. Both in their situations were falsely removed from their positions, and now both have won lawsuits against the districts that have fired them or removed them from their positions wrongly. So not only are officers punished if they speak out, but the review boards that are meant to keep police in check are punished if they don't side with the police. This can get very heavy, so it's important not to just wallow in it. We can enact change, and we have. Look at Tyree Nichols' case. It took about 20 days to get the officers punished for their actions, when, compared to George Floyd's case, it took approximately an entire year to get Derek Chauvin charged for George Floyd's death. Change is happening, but this also isn't the time to get passive. We need to take this further. We need to wipe the system and build it from the ground up. The police force is too morally corrupt, in my opinion, to save it. And for this, I propose the following solution. First, we completely demilitarize the police force. We sell their tanks, their assault rifles, these major tools that they use to suppress the general population. We then completely rewrite their budgets. We put the majority of funds that we're going towards militarizing them to anything that will help the general population, that being food, housing, medical care, stuff that will genuinely make the city's a better place as opposed to just suppressing people. Now, if that does put you off, let me point you to a study that was done in 2021 that showed that public housing on its own for homeless people reduced crime committed by 80%. That is an absurd drop in crime with just public housing alone. So once crime starts to drop, because it will, we then completely rewrite the police system. We either completely rehire or we retrain. I would prefer a combination, but we have every single police officer in the force or her going into the force have a complete retraining on how to de-escalate situations, on how to not use violence, on how to talk to people, things that would help the general public. And then we implement civilian regulations. Everything that the police force does is public to civilians, the entire civilians, no select board. We have everybody in a district able to see how the police force works. We have police using cameras 100% of the time. Police nowadays constantly turn off their cameras at mysterious times, air quotes. So no cameras turning off. And then also all police records, all footage they have, every record that they have is public. You can't hide that. Nothing that they do today. So yes, right now can look like a very depressing time, but this is not the time to lose hope. We are implementing change, but it also can't be enough. It can't be just the police force. We have to realize that the police force is just a cog in a greater machine, and to create a society where everybody has the ability to be happy, we need to keep going. So good luck out there and stay safe.